Mighty webinar of our Mighty Webinar series by Mighty Buildings. We're going to be covering today what is a ADU. So an ADU, otherwise known as Accessory Dwelling Unit, is a secondary house, apartment, or in-law unit constructed on a residential dwelling lot that has an existing home already on it. Now, they go by a lot of different names nowadays just because it's kind of a new thing that we're standardizing. Was kind of a little bit of a mystery before. So they go by things like granny flats, in-law suites, companion units, secondary units, as well as ohana units and backyard cottages, plus a bunch of other names that if we really sit down and list them, we'd probably be here all day. So to continue, there are different types of ADUs. There's the attached ADU, which is an addition attached to the primary residence. There's a converted ADU, which they take a existing space of the primary residence and they convert it, such as a garage or a basement or some other unutilized room. Lastly, there's the detached ADU, which is a completely separate independent structure behind the main residence. And there are junior accessory dwelling units, which is a max 500 square foot converted space, typically a bedroom that is allowed to have a shared bathroom, but still needs a separate entrance to the unit. Now, we here at Mighty Buildings, we specialize in producing prefabricated detached ADUs. If you're ever interested in learning more about what we do specifically, please reach out to our teams. We'll be happy to let you know what we can help you with. Now, before we continue, I know there's a lot of mysteries about what is and what's not an ADU, so I kind of want to give a couple of examples of what are not an ADU. So it's things like an RV are not an ADU, or like a pool house. They might serve similar functions for a lot of people, but at the end of the day, they are separate entities with different requirements. Same things such as a guest house, a yurt, or a tiny house. They all have different rules and regulations, which make them technically something else, which allows you to kind of have one or in a lot of cases both. So now to kind of get to the nitty gritty of everything, we have kind of the legal information of what ADUs are and what you're allowed to do on your property. Now here in California, we just had a big state mandate come out this year in 2020. With that, in most cases, you're going to be allowed to have one ADU as well as one JADU on your property. But if you're in a multi-residential zone, you can actually have two detached ADUs on, beyond just the one that you're allowed for a single family residence. Now, what zones you're allowed to have them is pretty much any residential zone. And this means like your mixed use, your multifamily, even in some cases agricultural zones, as long as you're allowed to have residential housing in those areas as well. So there are some limitations of what you're allowed to build. For sizes, you're allowed at least 800 square feet for one bedroom or studio, but for two bedroom units, you'd be allowed at least 1,000 square feet. Now, there are also, where you're allowed to place the unit also varies. Detached units must always be behind the primary residence, as it needs to kind of show that's a secondary unit to the primary. While attached units can, vary where they're located. Typically, as long as they're within the setback requirements, it's okay where it is. Designed, attached units pretty obviously need to be matched to the exact residence that it's being attached to. Detached units depends where you're located. Different jurisdictions are going to have different design standards. In some cases, you're going to have a lot of freedom. In some cases, you're going to have to match the main house. You'd have to talk to your local city jurisdiction to kind of figure out more about that specifically. Now, a really cool thing that happened with the new state laws that came out in 2020 are that you're now allowed throughout the state of California to rent both the primary and secondary units separately, which means you don't need to live on the property to have owner occupancy, which was a requirement in some cases before. On top of that, a really cool thing is before HOAs had a lot of power to directly block the construction of accessory dwelling units. Now, while they are allowed to put on additional requirements on what you're allowed to build, they have to have a version of an accessory dwelling unit allowed in some shape or form. So you can talk to your HOA to kind of get some more information on what's allowed for you guys nowadays. Now, this is the end of our Mighty webinar. I just want to thank you very much for listening and hope that you guys got something good out of this, and stay in tune for more soon.